Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As you know, we're in the middle of our WeCare workshop series on social isolation. In the last episode, we were talking about what social isolation was and how it affects us and our communities. Today, we're going to be talking about what the average person will need to be socially healthy, and so we can avoid those things that we've mentioned in the last episode. Okay, so we've established social isolation is a big deal, right? It affects our mental health, our physical health, and the health of our communities in some pretty serious ways. So now the question is becoming, what do we need to be healthy? Obviously, it's going to depend a lot on the person. Some people are going to need more or less social interaction than other people. The most obvious example is introverts versus extroverts, right? The extroverts need people a lot more than an introvert. Everybody needs people, but the extroverts are a lot more socially active and need a lot more varied and active social interactions. But even then, there's a lot of variation within the extroverts and introverts, and you can be an introvert who needs a lot of people, or you can be an extrovert who doesn't need as much people. It just depends. And so it can be hard to figure out and find those things that everybody needs and those commonalities between people. But we're going to talk about those today. And that's what we're going to be focusing on, figuring out what our social circles look like already, as well as those things that we need to make sure are included in our social circles to remain healthy. Before we get any further, I would like to introduce our guest for today, Alicja Carter from Gateway to Prevention here in Shawnee. She's kindly agreed to answer some questions, and so I'm going to now pop over to an interview I did earlier this week with her. Hello, thank you for joining us. For the people who don't know you, Alicja, I was wondering if you could briefly tell us about yourself and what you do at Gateway.
I would love to. I'm so excited to be here with you all. So my name's Alicja Carter, and I am Gateway's Wellness Director. And I used to be a therapist. I've been a therapist since 2007 and just recently moved into the role of Wellness Director. And I get to work with staff and patients and alumni and community members to help people live a healthy life and find their purpose and their passion. So my job is pretty cool.
That sounds like a really amazing job. So as you know, we at Community Renewal have been doing our WeCare workshop series on social isolation. So today we're talking about social circles and what people need to be healthy. So if you could tell us, what are some of the consequences you've seen of social isolation in your job, and why do people need to be socially healthy?
Yeah, those are such great questions. So before I start, I kind of want to let you all know that when I answer these questions, I'm answering them through the lens of the recovery community. And while obviously I'm not speaking for all people, that's I've got some good information that comes from patient testimonies, and a lot of our staff are in recovery, and so they've given me their feedback from this, and so I'm excited to share what I know about that. I wanted to start off, Sarah, have you ever heard of the rat park experiment?
I have not, but that sounds really fascinating.
It's really interesting, and so just to be quick about it, so a researcher took a rat and put him in a cage by himself and presented the rat with water and cocaine water, and the rat compulsively drank the cocaine water and died. And he thought, this rat is all alone in this cage and there's nothing else to do. Would it be the same outcome if the rat was put in a cage with lots of other rats and lots of things to do and to play with and to interact with? And so they tried that. And so the same scenario was set up, and hardly any of the rats drank the cocaine water, and none of them drank it compulsively or died. And so that is a very, that burns in my mind when we look at the importance of social connection, and that even in recovery or even with addiction, people can and do recover when they have the right environments. And so much of the time, what that environment means is people. And unfortunately, what the coronavirus has done has taken those with addictions, many of whom also endure depression and anxiety and have trauma. and it's taken them out of their rat park. And their rat park might have been the gateway groups, their 12-step meetings, the church gatherings, our community service teams, sober sports, the family systems, and place them back, for lack of a better term, into their isolated cages. And I was talking with Mark Hampton, who is a director of daily operations at Gateway, and he's also a staff member that's in recovery. And he shared, I'm going to read this to you. He said, the longer that people with addictions or even people that have had years in recovery stay isolated, the more times it gives us to play out our mistakes and wrongdoings of the past, as well as fixate on the insecurities and worries of the future. Our thoughts can begin to spiral out of control, and we start to feel helpless and hopeless. Being alone in our head is like a vacation to hell.
That's a powerful quote right there.
And so, I know that all of us deal with that stinking thinking, and but I think, people that deal with addiction and mental health deal with that to a bigger degree. That could mean some really serious consequences for them, including death, whether that's overdose or suicidal thoughts. And so connection for people in recovery, especially connecting to others with those same situations and understanding, to really connect face to face or hear a voice, is the key piece for them to be able to stay sober and sane, especially during this time.
That's really good. Thank you. So in your experience, obviously everyone needs a little bit different things socially. Everybody's different. But is there anything you've come across that you've found that a majority or everyone needs socially, like say a specific number of friends or confidants or a mentor or specific types of social interactions?
Yeah, another really great question. So, I'm just going to comment, when you come in to interact with people, maybe some things to consider. So some of this comes up. Carrie McCoy is another staff member, and she's also, part of our great recovery community. And one thing she talked about is, when you show up in your interactions with people, be real. And so that means you may not have your makeup on, and there might be dirty dishes in the back of your Zoom call, but people connect with realness. And, she encourages, and I agree with her, to share your struggles, and not just your struggles, but how you're coping with those struggles. And of course, it's great to be grateful and have gratitude. And it's great if you're okay and the things around you are okay. And that's awesome to share too. But we all connect through struggle and can all relate to that, and are all kind of secretly glad when everybody else doesn't have it just right, because I know I don't always have it just right. And that can just be reassuring that it's okay for us not to be okay. Another thing, especially with connecting through social media and during the coronavirus, all the needs seem very big, and you want to try to talk to as many people as you can and send out Facebook blasts to as many people as you can. And information is super important right now. And so that it definitely isn't a bad thing. But I think what people need even more than information and even more than distraction is you. And, you may consider, rather than posting an inspirational message to your Facebook, you share that with one or two people through a text and say, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? And one thing that Mark reminded me is how important calling someone is, and how important the face-to-face is, especially for people in recovery. And that is one thing our staff has I am just blown away. You know, they've had all the same adjustments as everybody else and are working from home. And people can't come into the office and get their services and see their counselors and see the people in their group. And they have worked so hard from 2 weeks ago to be making those calls, and are now setting up groups through Zoom where all these individuals who are working on their recovery can still stay connected. And back when the quarantine had started, there was a older gentleman who wasn't as familiar with Facebook, and so wasn't able to talk through that. And his therapist called him and was checking on him and how are things going and helping him set things up. And he was so grateful to hear a familiar voice and to know, one, that he wasn't alone, and that if he needed something, somebody was going to be there for him. And that's what I think calling and face-to-face does, is it reassures us, like I said, that we're not alone, and it brings everything back to this present moment. Mm-hmm. And maybe we share our struggles, and maybe we share our gratitudes, and maybe we share a joke, and future plans. And for this 5-minute conversation, life seems normal and seems manageable. Mm-hmm. And most, people can endure some really hard things for a really long time. But the key thing they have to keep going is hope. And that is one thing that I see people provide for each other, is hope. Whether it's just by seeing each other's faces and going, okay, there's people that are still here, that are still doing it, and so I can too. Or, people that they know they can call if they're having a hard time. So I guess that to sum that up, is be real and dig in and make a call.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about the importance of social circles, or what they should be made of?
Well, social circles are people, to me. I mean, that's what I think of. And it's important to be around people and connect with people that take care of themselves. And it's important for each of us to be somebody that takes care of ourselves, so that we can be that healthy person in the social circle. Mm-hmm. And so every day that you as an individual take care of your mind, take care of your heart, take care of your body, take care of your spirit, you make yourself accessible to somebody else who is needing a healthy person in their social circle, in their rap park. And then we'll just continue to give each other hope to take those next steps. The one thing I love about the recovery community is the very simple sayings that ring so true. And, we just help each other get through it one day at a time.
That's so helpful. Thank you so much for talking with us today. It's been so good to get other opinions and advice about social isolation and how it affects people. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. You're doing great.
Okay, that was really awesome, guys. As you can tell, she's got some really great things to say, and her organization does some really great work here in Shawnee. It's really nice to get some other people's opinions in here and to talk about things with other people. It's kind of weird having a social isolation workshop over the computer and away from you guys, so I like to include some of those things and make sure we've got some interaction going on. So it's closer to actual interaction. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is how to evaluate our own social circles and see how we are socially. Afterwards, I'm going to give you suggestions on what the average person needs in their lives. But again, that's going to vary a little, and yours might not look exactly the same. A social circle, what is that? It's the people you interact with regularly, the people who you hang out with. We're going to draw it out, actually, as a little bit of an exercise, and I'll walk you through that. If you want a bigger picture and that kind of thing and you want to draw it out with me, awesome. If you prefer to follow along in writing instead of verbally, I'll include something down in the description so you can follow along that way. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is in the middle of a piece of paper or on a whiteboard or someplace. You put yourself in the middle, in a circle, a box, a triangle, whatever you'd like, even a star. Just put yourself in the middle. Around yourself, write out names and titles of groups of people that you interact with on a daily basis. So your friends, your family, that kind of thing. Anybody that you come into regular contact with. This doesn't have to be friends and family, though. This could also be people like your work interactions, religious groups, hobby groups, volunteering places that you go to, neighbors, or any places that you visit a lot. For example, do you go to a coffee shop once a week when we're not isolated from each other, of course? And do you always have the same barista? She could count as a person you interact with on a regular basis. Include her in here, just for the fun of it. Do you have a cashier at a certain store that you always go to once a week when you get groceries? If you want, you can put friends as two different groups of friends. If you always hang out with a certain group of friends specifically over here, or this other group of friends at a different time. For example, you could have work friends and college friends. You could have friends from church or friends from work, that kind of thing. The next step is to connect them back to yourself with lines or dotted lines or whatever you think is appropriate. If you can, try and make the lines represent different types of relationships you have with these people. Maybe a larger, solid, thick line is a close relationship where you have with someone, while the dotted line connects you to the barista you see once a week, because you know them and you know her name, but maybe you don't know a whole lot about the person. You just small talk, chit chat, oh, how's the weather, that kind of thing. If you want, you can even branch out from some groups too. If at this point you realize, there's some people in my friend group who I'm best friends with, but there's some people I hang out with weekly as friends that I know, but I probably couldn't tell you what goes on with their life like every single day. You can branch things out. Make it a big tree of people, that's all up to you. Just so you can see the people you interact with on a weekly and daily basis kind of all out before you. Now you can kind of see how your social circles are taking form. And everyone's is going to look a little different. I have this example, of course, but it could be really one-sided. Maybe most of your social interactions come from your family and from work, and you don't have a lot outside of that. Maybe you have a lot from hobby groups, but you don't have any like close friends outside of your own household. It's just going to depend. And not any of these are technically better than others, because as you'll see later on, what we need in the basics is not what you might think it is. Though it's difficult, there are studies that have happened on what types of social interactions people need in their life and what people need to have a good quality of life. Mostly these were done in nursing home facilities and places that are able to have more controlled environments for the experiments, but they still apply to the rest of life. What they found is that at minimum, people need at least 3 strong, trusting relationships. Only 3, which surprised me, honestly. I thought it was going to be more. But these could be friends, families, a mentor, whatever. As long as you have 3 people that you have a strong relationship with that you can trust and go to with things that you need in life, and when you just need to talk, when you just need to be real with somebody. Alicia talked about that a little bit earlier in the interview, that you need to be able to be real with people. If you have 10 of these people, great, but for the most part, you're not going to have a much better quality of life than someone who has 3 of these people, assuming that you interact with them the exact same amount. So if you have 3 close friends that you see every single day, at least one of them, then you're pretty good. But if you have 10 close friends and you only really see someone who's close to you maybe once a week, sometimes twice a week, don't really see them and talk to them other than that, then it's not going to be quite as good. While quality matters a lot more than quantity of people, you do still need to interact with those people for them to count as social interactions in your life so you don't become socially isolated. And honestly, that's kind of the basics. it's not really as many people as you might have thought it would be. And honestly, that's the case for me. I thought there was going to be a lot more people than just 3, but it makes sense when you think about it. You need more than 3 social interactions a week, but if you can have 3 people you interact with regularly that have real, strong, meaningful relationships that you can trust, then the rest of your relationships, maybe being small talk and work talk and not related to the rest of your life, then you'll be okay. Now, that doesn't mean that you just need to talk to 3 people a week and you'll be good. You do need consistent interactions, but that, again, is going to be a lot more dependent on the person. An extrovert might need to talk to people multiple times a day, while an introvert might need to talk to a person a day or every other day with a real, honest conversation for these 3 best friends to count. And again, they don't have to be friends. They could be a family member, a spouse, or a best friend, or a mentor, or something like that. Just 3 people. And again, this is more of an average. Some people might need 4 or 5 different people in their life that they can go to for honest and open conversation. But it might depend more on how many times a week you have access to these people than it is on the number of people you're interacting with. You might be able to get by with 2 if you're talking to them every single day. Now, my personal recommendation is at minimum you probably need to be talking to people every other day, if not every day. If you're an extrovert and you recharge and are really filled a lot more than other people through social interaction, you need to talk to someone every single day. If you're an extrovert, you need people. Go find people. But if you're an introvert like me, you might be able to get by with talking to a close person every other day. And for right now, in social isolation, that can be really hard. It takes a little bit of extra effort to go out and call people, and maybe overcome a little bit of social anxiety to pick up the phone and text someone you're close to and say, hey, do you have time? Can we just talk this evening or later today? Just about life. I want to catch up with you. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes, but even though we all really need it, even though the person you're texting probably also really needs it. So don't be afraid to step out of your box a little bit with that, because your friend probably needs it as much as you do right now. And even when Corona's not around, preventing people from talking to each other. Once we have these relationships, the biggest challenge to you in remaining socially healthy is to be aware of the times in life where you're most likely to be socially isolated. As we talked about last time, that's times where there's a lot of transition going on and the supports you have before are gone, and you can be put off balance socially from that. I like to use the example of a chair. A chair needs at least 3 legs to keep it standing, just like we need at least 3 close friends in our lives. I think that was a wonderful coincidence, and we're going to use this. So the more legs a chair has, the better off it is, because if you lose one, then you can remain standing from it. And if something happens in life and you fall out of touch with one of your close friends and can't interact with them as much, you've got other close relationships you can fall back on for those times. If a chair only has 3 legs and something happens, then you're going to be put off balance and you're going to fall and it's going to hurt, and you can get back up again and you can find those relationships that you need, but it's going to take time and it's going to be rough until then. But if you've got 5 legs, let's say your chair has another random leg in the middle. I think sometimes tables and things do that to add some extra support. Then if you lose one, it's an easier transition to rely on 4 legs than it would be for a 4-legged chair to rely on 3 legs. So in a way, it's more the merrier. If you can maintain a lot of close relationships, do it. But again, you have to be interacting with them. It's not just having them available to you. There is a bit of effort on your own part to actually talk to people. And right now that's a little difficult, of course, because talking to people and picking up the phone to actually call someone is really difficult. But it's something we need to make sure we're doing, because no one's talking to each other like they used to, and that's affecting a lot of people in terms of social isolation. If your person that you talked to was a friend at work, and that's where you got a lot of meaningful relationship and social interaction out of, and you don't talk to them anymore because you don't have lunch every day together, then maybe you need to pick up the phone and call them during your lunch breaks now when you sit down for lunch. That partially to maintain the relationship you had with that person, but also so that you can both be healthy. Because I can pretty much promise you that if you're struggling not talking to your friend at lunch every day, they might be struggling too. I think you can see what I'm getting at here is just ensuring that we have backups for times in life when things get rocky and when things don't work out the way we think they're going to. One other thing that we can do with a chair to make sure it's more sturdy is to connect the legs to each other. If your social supports know each other and are connected to each other as well as you, it can actually be really beneficial to you. Because in times of life where things do get rocky and something else happens and maybe one of your chair legs goes away, having a firmer support of the other three legs can be really beneficial. So let's say, to use a younger example, that your friends and your family, let's say your mom, your dad, if you're still living at home, know each other, then if something's going on in your life, your parents and your friends will be better able to take care of you and help you in those rough times if they know each other and can talk to each other about you. And obviously not everybody wants to have all of their life know about all of their life. Some people especially like to keep their work life and their home life separated, and I understand that. And I'm not just saying you need to do that. That's going to be totally dependent on your situation. But maybe your two friend groups can know each other and hang out with each other more than they had before. Maybe you can bring your spouse to a hobby group or a volunteer group that you go to all the time. Introduce people to each other. Even if they aren't best friends, if they at least know each other, they can help you out in the long run. And who knows, maybe you're going to help your friends and family be more socially connected to help them when they're in a rough situation. So next week, we're going to be doing a live session as opposed to these videos that we've been posting. And hopefully we're going to have a couple other guests, and we're going to maybe answer some questions that you have, as well as just talk about some practicalities of how to do these things that we've talked about today, as well as last time. We really want to give some tips, tricks, practical advice on how to be socially isolated. And not just right now, but hopefully we can give you some advice on how to transition well back into the everyday life that we're going to get back to really soon, hopefully. Before I go, once again, I've got some questions for you to be thinking about before we have that live talk. So I want you to look at the relationships and the social circles that we talked about today. Whether you drew them or not, that's okay. That's up to you. But is there anything that surprised you when you thought about your own social circles? Were all of the people that you knew and interacted with from a specific part of your life and not so much from this other part of your life? Do your friends know each other? Is there just anything you noticed from that? Secondly, how does your social circle compare to what we talked about as like the healthy average? Do you have those 3 close friends who you have a strong, trusting relationship with? And again, they don't have to be friends. It could be a mentor. It could be a spouse. It could be a family member. But do you have at least 3 of those people, or maybe 3 groups? Sometimes people can be really helped by self-help groups or hobby groups, things like that. But just having those 3 people. If you don't have that, then do you know of anybody who you could start developing relationships with to become those people for you? And is there anything you can do to strengthen those relationships that you already do have? Maybe connect them to each other. Lastly, I have a challenge for you guys. Since we're not talking to people like we used to in the coronavirus, I feel like everyone's kind of on an extreme right now. Either you are not talking to people nearly enough, or you're talking to people more right now than you ever have in your entire life, because it feels like you've done multiple calls a day. I would challenge you this week, try and connect and make intentional time with those close relationships that you either have or would like to develop in your life. call them, text them, all of them at least once this week and per week until we talk to each other again. And then also text some other people. Branch out a little bit. Is there someone like a coworker who you eat lunch with every single day and now aren't? Text them. Reach out to them. See how they're doing. Maybe you don't need it right now, but maybe someone else you know needs it. But try to reach out this week to those that you're strongly connected to maintain those friendships, but also try to reach out to somebody new and try to use this time that's so weird to develop a very unique friendship with somebody new. Thank you so much for watching again, guys. It has been great, and I'm really excited for our live session next time, where hopefully we can answer some questions. If you have any questions you'd like to ask before then, so we can make sure to get to them, just put them in the comments, and hopefully we can answer them next time. Thanks. Bye.